Good afternoon and welcome to the Branding Experience Week 9. If you are in a quad semester, we are in week 5. All right, so today we're going to get right into it. Let's talk about what we're going to be doing today. So today we are going to discuss brand personal image and what defines that. We're going to talk about social media. I know a lot of you already probably have a lot of experience in that area or have a lot of knowledge, but we're going to talk about all the main big players out there so that we understand we're consistent. And then we're talking about effective goal setting. This is key to coming up with creating your own professional brand, and I think this is an area where a lot of um, people miss clarifying. So hopefully we get that sorted out today. All right, so let's get right into it. So personal branding. What are your thoughts on this image? Is that an image that gives you a positive feeling? Does it have a negative connotation to it? What kind of words come to mind when you see this logo? I know, so for them of you that don't know, this is the Air Jordan logo, famous by Nike and Michael Jordan. So then the question comes, we're tying this to Michael Jordan. Does he perceive as someone who's very professional? If you've ever seen him in an interview, he carries himself quite well. He has, there's actually a video on YouTube, not YouTube, sorry, Netflix, about him that really portrays him quite well. Does it portray quality image? Yeah, I think so. I think quality-wise, if if you look at the shoes and some of the now they're full apparel, there is quality associated with that. And I mean, also with quality, sometimes the old dollar sign, they are not cheap. Um, uh, any other words that kind of come to mind, right? He's an expert in the field. I mean, Michael Jordan is known to be, the greatest of all time, the famous GOAT, um, because of what he's accomplished over the years. So yeah, I think there's a lot of positive um, things come from this logo, and I think that's something that we need to take into consideration when we're looking at personal branding uh, and how it relates. So the question then becomes, who are you? What is your professional image? Um, and really, how does it tie in? So let's walk through some steps and we'll kind of get you there. You may have your own thoughts of what your image is, but I want you to approach this with a different mindset. I want you to come with a completely open mind and see if you end up where you thought you would have been before. So let's first define what professional means. So profession in the form of employment, especially that is possible only for education purpose and after training, such as law, right? So someone who's in that profession, so these high-end areas, so law, medicine, or teaching, right? A lot of education usually is applied, so someone who's very educated. But really, again, when you look down this, when you consult professional, I think this is the thing. So if you consult a professional, you expect advice that's accurate and appropriate in any work resulting in consultation in a complete and a professional to take responsibility for the given advice, right? So you're the expert in the field. So when we're talking professional, we're looking at you're the expert in the field. So how does that relate to you? Well, now we're thinking about what are you the expert in, right? Are you an expert in yourself? Do you know what you're good at? Do you know what you're the expert? Someone's going to give you you are going to be the person to go to. So let's think about that for a sec, and then we are going to look at these companies. So while you're thinking about your own what you're good at, let's look at these brands and think about, what are these professional? Do these come off as professional? Does Nike come off as professional? Some would argue yes, but maybe a little bit differently, right? Just think of it a little bit different versus Tesla. So if I'm going to rate these, let's make it a little bit easier. Let's rate these kind of a 1 to scale. So 1 being very low professional, and 10 being more professional. How would you rate Nike? I mean, me personally, I think you're somewhere in the 8, right? Tesla, what would you think? You think it would be in the high? I mean, it's got that professional image to it. It's very elite, especially when you stick dollar signs to it. So definitely a 9, maybe even 10. Amazon, did they show as professional? I don't know. I mean, maybe 6, 7. I mean, they don't seem to, because everybody uses it, so there's all that connection. The key point to take away from this, all these are very successful. So when you're looking at defining yourself, would you say you would be an expert in your field? And if you are, you could possibly, like Nike, are they an expert in their field? Absolutely. Tesla, are they? Absolutely. Amazon, absolutely. 10, 10, 10, 10, 100%. So make sure you're looking at what you're defining as a professional in the field that you're looking to get into. Sorry. So where do you see yourself working? Okay. And then are you a professional, or do you come off as very knowledgeable in that field? If not, then that's okay. But now we have a starting point. Now we know where we need to go. So we need to look at who's professional in your field. So you can't just take a different brand and carry it over. You can't say one's naturally more professional than the other. It depends on the field that you're in. All right. So let's look at some ways to be more professional. Let's look at social media because we can't ignore it. So we need to look at Facebook. And let's use the number rating scale. I think that works really well. On a scale of 1 to 10, so 1 to 10, 1 being less, 10 being more, how would you rate Facebook on the professional scale? I mean, if you look at where it started, it was very more from a communication standpoint, and it's obviously changed a lot over the years. But I think if it was me, I think you'd give this a 5, 50-50. Not the ideal spot to be advertising a professional brand because of all the amount of different avenues. It's just very busy. So there's opportunity there, but again, I don't know. I'd give it a 5 out of 10. I think from a professional standpoint, do they do things really well? Yes. Are they very specific in a certain field that maybe not necessarily? They dabble in it a little bit. What about, sorry, what about LinkedIn? Where do you think they fall under? If you don't have a LinkedIn account, that might be something that you should look at getting yourself one, because for sure, I think this is a 10 out of 10. A lot of employers are using LinkedIn from a resume standpoint, as a quick reference standpoint, to learn a little bit of you. And you're kidding yourself if you don't think employers nowadays are searching social media sites to find out a little bit more about you, either prior to your interview or after your interview. I know for a fact they'll use it twice, just so the ins and outs of it. And they'll search multiple ones, not just LinkedIn. So I think it's important that you have a good one. And we'll talk in later videos of how to create a proper social media professional site. But again, it's keeping in mind into the field that you're looking at, right? You don't want to give that image of a doctor when you want to get into say car sales or maybe running your own landscaping business. It's a whole different vibe, right? So we want to make sure that we're consistent, and we'll talk about that at the end of this video, making sure that we kind of connect in the dots. Let's look at another social site. Twitter. What do you think about Twitter? I think it's again, back to the scale of 1 to 10. I think it's higher than Facebook, but I think it's done really well in the sense that it's really 50-50, so it splits as far as being professional and social, but I think they're a 10 out of 10 if that makes any sense in both those areas. There's no really gray area, but I think I think this is a good opportunity as well to have a professional site. A lot of companies will use it as a communication tool. I mean, just the other day with hockey and playoffs and all that, they use it. MLSE uses it. A lot of companies use it as a communication tool. So in conjunction with LinkedIn, I think Twitter is a great opportunity to create that professional brand. And you can also have a social version of it, but I would recommend having a separate account. I think it works both ways. But I think Twitter is a good one. Let's look at the next one. TikTok, the famous TikTok that is out and just doing enormously well these days. I think right now, from a professional standpoint, it's probably like a 3 to 10, and primarily is for entertainment purposes only. I think, it has that value. Kind of like Instagram kind of falls into the same category. Would you use it as well for a professional? I don't think so right now. I don't think it's there yet. A lot of people are just using it. If you look at what's trending on TikTok and that sort of thing, probably not the ideal thing to do. I would personally, so if I'm looking at personal brand, which social media sites I'm going to be looking at, Twitter and LinkedIn for sure, 100%. Okay. All right, so let's start looking now specifically, now that we kind of know what social media sites, and we'll talk about the etiquette that we should be using in these, right? We want to keep it clean and professional with relation to your field. So let's start by getting you set up properly. So let's look at what your primary goal is, right? So let's help define your personal brand, and let's start asking yourself these questions. So what is your primary goal? Well, I think the challenge here is this word, your goal. This is where people get mixed up. I think we really need to define what a goal is. And after this video, I hope you guys really take this to heart, because I think this is a big mistake where a lot of people struggle, and because they don't necessarily define it. And I'm going to help clarify that so you can actually quantify it, so that when you're looking at yourself and creating your goals for yourself, you can be effective and create really effective goals. So let's start by looking at defining it a little bit better. All right. So let's define a goal. So goals are quantifiable targets of a performance to be achieved within a specific time frame. Okay, so those are the two things that a goal must have for it to be effective. All right, so quantifiable. What does that mean? Actually, delete this. It's easier. I'm going to run out of room. Actually, make this a little smaller. It means that it has a number associated with it. A number, a percentage, right? An actual something that physically that you can score, just like a mark on a test, a 30 out of 100 or a 5 out of 10, something that has an actual number associated with it, right? The other part that it needs to have is a specific time frame. Okay, so this is like hours, minutes, days, weeks. You get where I'm going with this. Months. Can't see that very well. Months. I wouldn't necessarily worry about years when you're talking about goals, but you can have that's more long term, but you can even have years. But generally right now, You should be sticking generally, if you're looking at dates, days and months are usually what works best. Weeks, months would be ideal because you can have multiple goals. All right, so are we clear? So a goal needs to be quantifiable and have a specific time frame. So let's look at that. Something that I think a lot of people struggle with. I've used this example many times in class, and that is, what is the goal in a game of hockey? What is the goal in the game of hockey? I want you to think about that for a second. Maybe you can write some answers down. I'll give you a minute. Let me guess. You put answers like to win. You said have fun. You might have said to score goals. You might have said to win the cup. Let me think of some other answers. To score more goals. Again, getting closer. To score more goals. Keep in mind what I told you what the definition of a goal is. It needs to have quantifiable, so it needs to have a number in it, okay? And it needs to have a specific time frame. So let's break this down. So quantifiable. So what's quantifiable? Well, we know in hockey we need to score goals, right? Perfect. How many more goals? One more goal than the other team. Right? There's the quantifiable right there. Right? And the second part is easy when you're looking at hockey, but when it comes to yourself, it can be flexible. So one more goal. What's the time frame in a game of hockey? Well, it's 3 20-minute periods, which equals 60 minutes. Right? So, what's the answer? Oops. To score one more goal than the other team with 3 periods, 20 minutes each. Okay? So when you're looking at yourself and you're trying to think about what goals that you need to create for yourself, what's your primary goal, you need to quantify it. A lot of people say things like to get a job. Okay, think about that for a second. Is it have that? No. Okay, so we want maybe clarify it a little bit more. So maybe it's to drop off. Let's look at it like this. Maybe to drop off 5 resumes within 1 week. So there's your time frame. That's a goal, right? And keep in mind, it's important, is that you can have multiple goals. You don't want to create this massive goal that's unachievable. Like, think about it like this way. If I came to you, okay, I need you guys to pass this course. Some people would think that's a goal. It's not, because after I give that goal to you, do you know where to start? Some of you may start with reading. Some of you might start on looking at the website. Some of you might do some research. Some of you start by asking some friends. But you're not consistent. You're not going out and starting it down. So make the goals tiny ones. Start small. So maybe it's because you don't have a resume. Okay, let's start with that. And we'll look at that in the next video. If you don't, perfect. Well, then there's a perfect goal. Goal number 1. So create 1 resume. At the end is 3 days. Perfect. And it's achievable, right? Because then you know whether you're passing or failing. If you haven't, don't move on to the next one. Finish this goal first. And then once you've completed this one, then create another goal. So goal number 2, maybe you're gonna hand in. So you're gonna hand in the 3 resumes to an employer, right? And maybe we're gonna give you 1 week to do that. Perfect. So now let's look at another goal after that. So maybe the next goal is let's follow up. Maybe with maybe some phone calls. Phone the employers and say, hey, just following up, just make sure you got my resume. And when we're going to do that, we're going to do that in 1 day. And now you can see how it all kind of starts coming together in steps, and you're making progress. And it's not to say, and if it doesn't turn into a job, then maybe you move on and you pick maybe a different field. You can branch it off into many goals, okay, as you're traveling along. And eventually, so this one may not work, but this one might. And that's where you start. But you got to start small. I think that's the biggest challenge that everyone. 2 things they happen is they, one, don't really understand what a goal is. They get that mixed up. Some people call it a mission statement, or a vision statement, which is even longer. And that's really, that would be something. Say, well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to become a veterinarian. Okay, that's long term. So let's break that down. That's great. That's where you want to be. Let's step way back and where are you now, and understanding where you are now. You need to get there, right? So we need to make the steps, right? You can't just you don't jump the steps. It's impossible. It's too big. And what happens if you try? You just get frustrated and you fail and you give up, and you become depressed and you just don't. It's too hard, and it is too hard. But when you do things in little baby steps, life is easy. Before you know it, you're at the top of the stairs. Okay? Are we clear on that? So make sure you really understand the goals. And when you're looking at a goal, when you write it down, I think that's also key, is writing it down, is that look, make sure it's quantifiable. Whoops. It's quantifiable. It's a Q. Very bad. Actually, just make sure it's quantifiable, so it has an actual number to it, and it has a specific time frame, because you need to follow up, right? Don't just leave it thing and say, I want to hand in 6 resumes. Time frame, because we need to know whether we're being successful or not. If not, you have no way of knowing, and you can't make progress. Okay? All right, let's move on. Which sites do you want to connect? So this gets back to knowing to your field. So where is your target market, which is your employer? Where do you want to find yourself? Do you want to use YouTube? I had an employee, well, it wasn't, but we actually end up hiring them, who actually created a YouTube link and said, hey, if you want to see a little bit about me, that was a great opportunity. So they would do that. Facebook, if depending on what your industry you want to get into. Twitter, for sure, right? So decide what social media and how you're going to connect them. Sometimes it's even face-to-face, depending on the industry. But you need to figure out how you're going to connect to those people. And that can be tied in back to your goal. You get multiple goals, right? Number 3, what's your strategy? What's this look like? So let's clarify this. What is a strategy? Okay. So a strategy is multiple goals, right? Which will give you your strategy. So looking at this kind of vision, do you have a vision statement? Where do you want to be? Okay. How are you going to market yourself? Have you created the goals? Is there money sometimes involved? Do you need to maybe buy clothes? Do you need to, all this ties in. Are you connect with people? Are you going to talk to people? Okay. How are you going to measure the success? All these entail is your strategy. And it starts with creating your goals. And you're not going to get it. Don't just think you're going to hit it out of the park the first time, because you absolutely will not. Just start somewhere. And the next day, you'll be further ahead than you were the day before. Whether you're on the right track, it doesn't matter. because you'll have learned something that you learned from the day before that you're going to apply. And that's the key. Okay, so continue, just start at it. Don't try and hit it. I use the analogy a lot of times in class. I talk about using the dartboard analogy, right? So my idea of a dartboard, right? There are two types of people. There's those that have one dart and those that have multiple darts, right? These are multiple darts. And ask yourself this question. Who's going to hit the bullseye first? If the goal or the overall vision is to eventually hit the bullseye, right? Because then you win the game, which in this case you'd hit your, you'd get your dream job, maybe doing something or doing what you want in life. Which one of these two players is going to be successful first? And if you said this guy that has multiple darts, you're absolutely right. Why? Because every time he throws a dart, he's learning what works and what doesn't work. And then eventually, bingo. Right? What happens to this guy? Either two things happen. Either he never throws the dart because he's too scared, right, of failing, because once he fails, he feels like it's over. Or second, he throws it, misses. If he's lucky, kind of hits it, and gets frustrated and says, that's it, and quits. But if you go into it with the expectation that it's all about learning, about throwing different darts and finding out where that dart's going to land, so eventually you'll hit the bullseye. If you know that's the game plan, that's the strategy, you will be successful. Have to. Right? Even if you've never thrown a dart before, and I gave you a dart and we got in class today and I said, okay, here, you've never thrown a dart, by the end of the day, you would hit the bullseye. And you've never done it before. So how is that any different? Right? Okay. And that's what we're talking about when we're referencing the strategy. Next, what can you offer that's different from others? So this is one where everyone says, there's nothing different. There's nothing special about me. And you're right. Because there are a lot of, and I don't take that away, that yes, there's things that you have unique talents, but there are many other people that are doing the exact same thing. So I want you to think creative. What are you going to stand out? Like I said, I had that one employer once create a YouTube link and sent me the link. We watched it actually at the beginning of his interview, which was something different, which was key. It kind of stirred it up, right? Be different. In the way the execution doesn't have to be different from a skill set standpoint, but maybe approach to meet the lifestyle of the business or the company, so there's a good match. So you kind of figure that out, and that's from doing some research, and you can find it if that's what you want to do. But don't be afraid to be different. Employers appreciate it because one thing it does show is you're making the effort, and again, it gets back to throwing those darts. An employer is more likely to enjoy to talk to someone who has thrown many, many darts in their life versus the one person who just threw the one dart. Because they understand, every employer understands, especially if it's an entrepreneur where you're actually talking to the owner, understands that this is how you get things done and how you be successful in life. Not whether you've hit the bullseye, but that you're trying and you're going to make the effort. That's what they want to see. All right. There's also lots of, on YouTube, there's lots of different ways to be different in a resume or in an interview. I definitely Google those. It's never ending. There's always different creative ways, especially with technology nowadays, that companies are using to look at. So I'd encourage that. And then last but not least, how we monitor your progress. Well, this is simple. Remember, this gets back to the time frame. Right? Remember when we talked about goals? And we talked about that it has to be quantifiable and it has to have a specific time frame. This is why. Because we need to know whether we're being successful or not. And really what it comes down to is, what does that time frame look like? So if you're setting goals for yourself, start by making them small. Seriously, start with a day. What do you want to do today? And then once you see that you've started getting successful, then you can move it on to a week or a couple of days. And then you can each goal doesn't have one goal, right? So if you're using the dartboard analogy, your goal, say to throw darts, is to at least get within 3 rings of the bullseye within 1 day. Because you're learning already. So the next day that you go back, when you're a little more fresh because you're tired now, it's going to get closer and closer. So you need to be able to measure your progress. Because that's where and you will start. You will start making progress, right? And the progress really is that you're learning as you go. And that's key, right? And if you keep moving forward, you'll eventually get there. And everyone's going to be different. Don't just say, oh, because Johnny down the street or your buddy got it, he's in 1 year now he's working a job of his life or he's got the perfect. You're not them. You are you, and you're going to set your own time frame. Do not put pressure about what other people put upon you. You set your time frame. Everybody is different. I repeat myself. Everybody is different. So you need to set your own time frame that works for you, right? You put 5 different people in my classroom, you're not all going to hit the bullseye at the exact same time. That makes 0 sense. Very unrealistic. And you don't know who's going to hit what. And it's just a matter of keep trying because you're going to learn. Everyone learns at different rates. You know that now. All right. So how are we going to monitor progress? Well, we're going to look at it on our goals. So this is tying into all our goals. So we'll have, say we have 5 goals. And we set different time frames. So goal number 1, goal number 2, goal number 3, goal number 4, goal number 5. And our goal is to get all these goals achieved in 1 week. Well, we got 1 done, 2 done, 3 done, 4 half done, and 5 didn't get done. That's okay because you got these 3 done first. And then you just set these 4, you just move them on to the next week. And then add. It's a never-ending list, guys. It just keeps going on and on and on. But you keep setting goals for yourself, and that's the key to success. Okay. Let's wrap up. So today, homework, I want you guys to review week 9's checklist. Complete the quiz number 6. And remember, you have 1 hour to complete once you start. And then also complete assignment number 6, video assignment. All right. In the next video, we'll get into looking at resumes. All right. Good luck, guys. See you next video.